And now, here to perform the national anthem, please welcome former musician, First Class U.S. Navy Band, Chelsea Vanderpool.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's host, the Heritage Foundation's counselor and spokesperson, Genevieve Wood.
Wow! Good evening! What a crowd! Woo! This is amazing. You may all be seated. Good evening. Thank you for that very warm welcome. Thank you for being here tonight for the Heritage Foundation's 50th anniversary celebration. We are delighted you're here. We've got a great program planned for you. We are here to celebrate a lot of big accomplishments over the last 50 years, but we want to be clear that this isn't just going to be about the past. We also want it to be about the future. And as I look around this room, I see over 2,300 freedom-loving advocates. That's right, over 2,300. That is a great encouragement to me. I know it's a great encouragement to my Heritage colleagues, and we hope it is a great encouragement to you. We want this night to be an encouragement and a motivation for you. Now, as we think about the last 50 years, I see so many friendly faces in this room. The lights are bright, but I can spot out a few. Friends and family and members of the Heritage Foundation, you all have been on this journey with us over the last 5 decades. Many of you have been in the trenches with us, you've fought with us, you've supported us, and we know that you will continue to be with us as we work and continue to work to build an America where freedom, opportunity, prosperity, and civil society flourish. Without you, we would not have a conservative movement. Thank you. Give yourselves an applause. Now, there are 4 individuals, however, that we want to honor tonight who played a really special role in the Heritage Foundation. And without them, we would not be the organization we are today. And the first person we want to honor is the 75th Attorney General of the United States, the Ronald Reagan Distinguished Fellow Emeritus, the Honorable Ed Meese. Ed Meese has worn many hats in his over 25 plus years at the Heritage Foundation, but Ursula, Ed, the Heritage Foundation, the entire conservative movement owes you such a debt of servitude, great debt for your service to this country. Thank you. We also want to honor tonight Phil Trulick, who we sadly lost just this past year. But we're delighted to have members of his family here tonight, Sutton and Walker. Thank you all for being here. In Phil's over 30 plus years at Heritage, he was the first director of research. He went on to become the EVP and then the COO. And Phil wasn't just responsible for our buildings and our physical presence on the Hill, he was also responsible for our intellectual presence as well. We owe him a great debt of service as well, and thank you all for sharing your dad with us. Also joining us this evening is the family of one of the founders of the Heritage Foundation and really a godfather of the conservative movement, Paul Weyrich. Here they are. Joyce, thank you for being here. Diana, Steve, Andrew, Dawn, and other members of the family. We loved your father. He left not just a legacy at Heritage, but so many other organizations that he helped found and start. That legacy lives on today. And anybody who knew Paul knew how committed and how passionate he was about faith, about the family, about this country. Thank you all for being here tonight. And of course, last but not least, the founder of the Heritage Foundation who led us for over 36 years, Ed Feulner. And his better half, Linda. Ed, did you think 50 years ago we'd be doing this? Not in his wildest dreams. Ed really took Heritage from a very small policy shop to what our friends at the New York Times a few years ago called the beast of all think tanks. We took that as a compliment, didn't we? Absolutely. But I know Ed would say, even though he played a huge role in Heritage development, there were two women behind the scenes that kind of really kept the trains running on time. Kathy Rowan and Missy Stevens. And Missy Stevens joins us tonight. She and a few other special individuals who've had special relationships with Heritage are going to take us on a brief journey through the past 5 decades. So please welcome Missy Stevens.
Hello there. Good evening. My name is Missy Stevens, and I came to work. I came to work at Heritage in August of 1977. Prior to that, Ed Feulner and I worked in Phil Crane's office on the House side, and Phil Trulick worked on the Senate side. The three of us went to the Republican Study Committee in 1974. When Ed decided to come to Heritage, I was asked if I was apprehensive about joining Ed and Phil in this startup organization, and I honestly was not. I knew that Ed had a vision for Heritage, and because he and Phil believed it was going to be successful, I did too. We were a young and close-knit group of 28 staffers. It's good that we all got along because we were crammed in the office on the top floor of an old converted movie theater off Stanton Park with only a few Xerox copiers and electric typewriters, and we were going to change the country. could ever really have imagined that Heritage would become what it is today. But I know one of the reasons is that we all believed in the mission, and we worked together as a team to accomplish the goals, a tradition that continues to this day, but on an incredibly larger scale. Thank you.
Beautiful. My name is Marjorie Dannenfelser, and I'm the president of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. The Heritage Foundation is where my career began and is a constant resource and constant encouragement to me now. And it's a pleasure to work with Kevin on the first right, the most fundamental right, the right to live. So I'm from Eastern North Carolina, and my goal in college was to work at the Heritage Foundation. It was the first place dedicated to making the Richard Weaver adage, ideas have consequences, real for conservative policy ideas. So, as a sophomore at Duke, I typed, and I mean I typed, a single-space, groveling letter to Bob Huberty at the Resource Bank. And I asked him for an internship, and surprise, he hired me as an intern at the Resource Bank. I still have the letter. I treasure it. During my internship, I was very pro-choice, and those ideas were challenged intellectually and philosophically, and that started me down a lifelong path. My first real jobs in the world were with Lou Cordia and Bob Huberty. Thank you both. I hope you're here. It was exciting to work at the dawn of such an important moment in the 80s and to support the executive branch liaison and the Resource Bank work to connect scholars and policy experts and conservative group leaders. I was supporting that. I'm not going to say I was doing it. The talent was already there. Heritage's influence in recruiting policy personnel for the Reagan administration and building coalitions of like-minded thinkers who were motivated already to implement policy made the seminal work Mandate for Leadership not just a huge reference book that clunky interns had to carry around all over the Heritage Foundation like I did, but that book was a catalyst for real conservative change. Ideas did and do and will always have consequences. I am grateful also, finally, that what Heritage did for me is provide a training ground for superior organizational expertise, for launching my organization, SBA, in the early 90s, and building it into an effective organization now. And for all of this, for everything you did for me, I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a good night.
Good evening. My name is David Bossie. I'm president of Citizens United. And as you know, thank you very much. And as you know, Heritage has been a thought leader and an active partner in the fight against the left since my first memories, working closely with the Heritage Foundation in the 90s. From when I served as political director at Citizens United, as an investigator on the Senate Whitewater Committee, or as the chief investigator for the House Committee on Government Reform and Oversight, Heritage has been a leader in the fight. And we were successful. I worked with Heritage staff members led by Rick Dearborn. I hope Rick is here somewhere. Rick, one of the greats, as we fought every leftist Clinton nominee during the transition in 1992 and 1993. We helped defeat or force the withdrawal of several radical nominees and set the stage for others, like radical Attorney General Janet Reno, to be on the defense from her first day in office. Heritage was also instrumental during the Gingrich Revolution of 1994. The famous contract with America may never have been as successful, they agree, it may never have been as successful without Heritage's leadership. Heritage is the bedrock of today's conservative movement, and I'm incredibly proud to be here to remind everyone of the impact of the Heritage Foundation on America over the past 50 years. and share my experiences from the last 30 years that I have been around the conservative movement. And I can't wait to see what the Heritage Foundation does in the next 50 years. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
My name is John Coleman. As the kid of a rodeo cowboy and a cosmetologist from Georgia, Washington, D.C. seemed far away. But I knew I wanted to make an impact for the country that I loved, and I saw Heritage as an outpost in the Capitol and a key architect of the conservative policies that had shaped my formative years. When I learned that I was accepted as an intern in 2003, I was thrilled. That summer, I was able to see firsthand that Heritage isn't just a think tank. Heritage is a think tank for action, always on offense, but anchored in the bedrock of Judeo-Christian values and the American way. The foundation helped shape the Reagan Revolution and the Contract with America and critical topics such as welfare and healthcare reform. And Heritage's passion for impact has only increased after 5 decades. Today, Heritage is shepherding a nationwide push for education freedom, highlighting the dangers of an ascendant Chinese Communist Party, holding states accountable through the election integrity scorecard, and drafting innovative solutions to the threats posed by big tech and ballooning debt alike. Some of the brightest ideas in contemporary American politics have originated right here. And through all the political storms, Heritage has stood immovably for human flourishing. The idea that we are all created in the image of God and endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights and infinite possibility. But human flourishing is now under assault, and at Heritage's half-century mark, we bear responsibility for safeguarding her future and America's future in the midst of uniquely trying times. I'm proud to serve the foundation in my own small way as a one-time intern and current board member, and I'm grateful to Heritage and for all of you here tonight who sustain it. I hope that each of us tonight can here recommit to supporting this venerable institution in its fight for America for another 50 years. Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Vince Colonnese. Nice to meet you guys. I joined the Heritage Foundation as an intern in 2010 because I considered it the premier bastion of conservative thinking in the nation's capital. And for years, it was Rush Limbaugh who told his audience about the Heritage Foundation and its importance to our country. Yeah. You know, I trusted Rush. I wanted to be a part of that mission. So as a Heritage communications intern, I got to work doing research and writing every day about the excesses of the Obama administration. In other words, I was doing journalism. The connections I made and the skills I learned at Heritage led me to the Daily Caller, where I became the editor-in-chief after Tucker Carlson turned his attention to a little struggling podcast called Tucker Carlson Tonight. In addition to my work at the Daily Caller, I'm now the host of the Vince Colonnese Show on WMAL right here in Washington, D.C. And I'm doing my best to call out our corrupt media and restore fact-based reporting. Heritage is doing the same. Heritage-supported and created media ventures are absolutely equipping Americans with the truth. Whether it's the excellent news and commentary at places like Town Hall or exclusive government document exposés published by Heritage's in-house news outlet, The Daily Signal, our country is meaningfully improved by having places where the truth can be told. I like to think that we're all doing our part to keep Rush's mission going. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Sturdy, and it's an honor to be here tonight. I had been told that the Heritage internship was the best in town, and I'm happy to report that as a current intern, it's completely true. Today is my last day. This is my last act as an intern, and for that, I'm very grateful. At Heritage, I've had the opportunity to form meaningful connections with influential decision makers and new colleagues. What's more, no other institution offers young people the ability to engage with constitutional law in the way that Heritage, and specifically the Meese Center, does. Since the 60s, America has seen the courts and the law dominated by radical ideology. So there's perhaps nothing more pressing than regaining control of the legal sphere to fight for what is right and true. Specifically, America needs young conservatives, Generation Z, who not only have the right ends in mind, but also a commitment to the means and processes called for in the Constitution. Yes, conservatives are in a precarious place when it comes to Gen Z, but there remains hope. Conservative institutions are seeing an uptick in applications, a welcome sign that though our work is cut out for us, we are up to the challenge. Thank you and God bless.
Well, as you can see, a lot of different folks have come through the Heritage Foundation over the years, and many of you are in the room tonight. So we want to ask everybody who currently works at Heritage, interns at Heritage, or has ever worked or interned at Heritage to please stand. Wow. Thank you for your service. Thank you for making Heritage the organization it is today. And thank you for all you're doing wherever you are now and for staying in the fight. Well, ladies and gentlemen, to set the stage for the rest of tonight's program, we really wanted to paint a picture in word and song of the America that we're all fighting for. An America with flourishing families, thriving communities, a place where our local institutions, our churches, our neighborhood associations, our businesses on Main Street, they're defining what America is, not the administrative state in Washington, D.C. We all for that? So tonight, we want to feature for you now, This is the House I Live In, which was originally performed by Frank Sinatra in 1945. But tonight, it will be performed by Mary Millben. And Mary is really the voice of the American dream. She's performed for 4 U.S. presidents. She performed at the 2020 National Republican Convention. She's performed at the NFL games, MLB games, NBA games. You get the idea. She's got the voice. And we're delighted that this friend of the Heritage Foundation is going to perform this performance tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage singer and actress Mary Millben. Love you.
Well, happy 50th anniversary to the Heritage Foundation. Let's hear it for Heritage. It's so good to be here with you this evening. What a beautiful room. This is filled with people who love God and certainly love our great country. For America, it is the greatest country in the world. Yes? I said America is the greatest country in the world. Yes, it is. Well, and we thought this song would be most appropriate tonight because the lyrics certainly speak to our great country. It says, "What is America to me? A name, a map, or a flag I see, a certain democracy. What is America to me?" The house I live in, a plot of earth, a street, the grocer and the butcher, and the people that I meet, the children in the playground, the faces that I see, all races and religions. That's America to me. The place the town I live in, the street, the house, the room, the pavement of the city, or garden all in bloom, the church, the school, the clubhouse, the million lights I see, especially the people. That's America to me. Oh, especially the good old American people of God. And that's America. That's America. Oh, God bless America. Let's hear it for Leon Lacey and this wonderful band.
Wow, Mary, what a performance. I am honored to share the stage tonight with so many great Americans, including Mary Millben, but also our keynote speaker tonight, Tucker Carlson, is in the house. The president of the Heritage Foundation will be giving us a very inspiring message for the future. Kevin will be here. And you're also going to meet the recipient of the Claire Booth Luce Award, so very special program. But before we get to that, we're going to have dinner. And before we have dinner, we're going to ask God to bless our food. And to do that, I would like to welcome to the stage now the 2023 Heritage Foundation Distinguished Intern Alumnus. I know he's coming up. He is a pastor of St. James Catholic Church in Falls Church, Virginia. His name is Father Paul Scalia of the Archdiocese of Arlington. Come on up, Father.
Let's now bow our heads in prayer and ask the Lord's blessing upon our time together here. God of history, judge of nations, lawgiver and Lord, who guide and govern all according to your perfect design, who created man and woman in your image and likeness, who set us over your creation to bring it to your glory, to participate in your governance, to shape society in accordance with your truth. You who have imbued us with unalienable rights that we may serve you in freedom, who raise up the lowly and bring down the haughty and proud, who have gathered us here this evening to give thanks for the good work you have strengthened us to do, we ask your blessing upon us now. Conscious that unless you build the house, those who build it labor in vain, and unless you watch over the city, we keep vigil in vain, we ask you first to grant us that holy fear, to revere the dignity, responsibility, and freedom you have entrusted to us. Purify our hearts to labor with malice toward none, with charity for all. Grant us firmness in the right, as you yourself give us to see the right. Bless our nation, for whose good we strive. Grant her both strength and humility, and a renewal in that ordered liberty that is her foundation and goal. Finally, be with us in this time of thanksgiving and joy to bring grace to our conversations, to our friendships, old and new. Mindful of those who go without, we ask your blessing on the food we receive, that it strengthen us to serve you and our neighbor. We pray all this as you live and reign forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your meals, and we will be back later with tonight's program. To our next presenter, we're going to be talking about the Claire Booth Luce Award, and that recipient, I'm not going to tell you who that person is, but what he just sang about really, I would say, portrays this person's life. There's somebody who knows we're up against a lot of challenges. They've known that for a long time. They've been in the battle, but they still have a lot of hope about the future of this country. But before we get to announcing who that is, I want to introduce to you the chairman of the board of the Heritage Foundation, a friend of many in this room, a friend of the American family, and just a wonderful woman who's going to tell us more about the Claire Booth Luce Award. Please welcome Barb Van Andel Gaby. Knock it out.
Wow, what a night, Kevin. I just want to say on behalf of the Board of Trustees, thank you, thank you, thank you. What an incredible event it's been the past 2 days. You knocked it out of the ballpark, so thank you. You know, and I also want to thank all of those of you who are in our audience today who have given your time and your treasure to the Heritage Foundation over the years. I was just thinking about the Heritage Foundation and the Coors family, the Scaife family, the Noble family. You know, when you join Heritage, and even my family, it's a family organization. And isn't that wonderful? Because that's really what America is built on, right? Is family. So thank you, all of you, for giving to Heritage throughout the years. We genuinely appreciate you. In 1991, the Heritage Foundation established the Claire Booth Luce Award to recognize those who advanced conservative political thought and policies in America and throughout the world. This award, the highest honor Heritage bestows, celebrates the legacy of Claire Booth Luce, a United States Congresswoman, ambassador to Italy, wartime journalist, author, playwright, and Heritage trustee. Claire Booth Luce believed that a strong conservative movement would not only create a better America, but a better world. This prestigious award has been bestowed upon a small group of conservative leaders who have made significant contributions to freedom around the world and the ideals upon which America has been built. The cause of advancing freedom requires courage, conviction, and an unwavering commitment to principle. Claire Booth Luce embodied all of these. Tonight, we honor someone else who has demonstrated this dedication to conservative principles, not only through personal character, but through action. We get to gratefully recognize a leader who joins the ranks of the distinguished recipients of this award, who have strengthened the conservative movement and served for the cause of freedom. So tonight, to announce tonight's recipient of the Claire Booth Luce Award, I would like to welcome to the stage my dear friend and fellow trustee, Abby Spencer-Mott. Abby?
Wow, what an evening this is. Star-studded crowd, all of you. Thank you. I am so honored and excited to be here to present this year's Claire Booth Luce Award. As you all know, and Barb alluded to, Claire Booth Luce led quite a life. An author, a conservative thinker who knew how to work the room. She also was an early feminist who understood that intelligence and success is not based on sex, but rather on hard work. She was an avid reader and an anti-communist who spent her school years in Tarrytown, New York, before later in life settling in Washington, D.C. If those descriptions sounds like anyone else you know, then you might know this evening's winner of the Claire Booth Luce Award, Diana Davis Spencer. Tonight, the award recognizes a woman who exemplifies what Heritage stands for, a role model for the conservative movement, but also a role model for me, because Diana Davis Spencer is not only a pioneer and champion of conservative thought, she's also my mom and my children's grandmother. Like Claire Booth Luce, Mom started a career as a writer. Despite early academic struggles, she had an appetite for reading books and history and a passion to understand the heightened dangers of communism and the importance of the American promise. This woman, who very young struggled to read, now devours 4 newspapers a day and can keep up with the best and the most intellectually elite. This woman, who raised a daughter with special needs and cared for her husband struggling with MS, still found time to advocate for those less fortunate and serves as a mentor to many in the philanthropic world. This woman, who runs circles around people half her age, fights for the causes that matter, makes an incredible difference in everyone's life, and is an absolute marvel. There's a reason Diana Davis Spencer's grandchildren call her Go-Go. Whether she's serving on boards or instilling free speech principles and entrepreneurship courses at American colleges, or wooing heads of state, publishing articles, or interviewing business leaders, and even an astronaut, she gives 100% and goes at 90 miles an hour. An avid skier who thrives on the moguls, Diana embraces the ups and downs of life with gusto. She is a businesswoman, a philanthropist, a fighter, a friend, a mom, and an incredible grandmother. How very lucky I am that she is here tonight to receive the Claire Booth Luce Award. It is with great pleasure I now introduce Diana Davis Spencer.
Well, good evening, and yes, I am a news junkie. Thank you, dear Abby, for that beautiful and effusive, but slightly biased introduction. What a gift to have such a wonderful daughter, and of course, I'm not biased. It is so uplifting to be with all of you patriots to celebrate our beloved Heritage Foundation's big 50th. We live in an unsettled and perilous world, and Heritage has played a major role standing up to protect our cherished liberties and fueling the conservative movement. Tonight, I'm truly awestruck to receive this special Claire Booth Luce Award, and very honored to be amongst such inspirational recipients, such as my hero, President Reagan. I've been told that President Reagan would often tell a joke to lighten the frigid Cold War landscape. With a twinkle in his eye, he'd throw out a question like, "How can you tell a communist?" "Well, it's someone who reads Marx and Lenin." "Well, then how can you tell a capitalist?" "It's someone who understands Marx and Lenin." His humor, I'm sure, helped break down barriers, perhaps even the wall. President Reagan certainly understood that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Sadly, as memories of the Cold War wane, positive views of socialism are on the rise, especially among Gen Zs and millennials. In fact, 70% now say they would vote socialist. They might think differently if they'd even get a bird's eye view of a socialist country. I've seen firsthand the oppressive effect of communism. In Russia in the late 50s, for example, I watched families wait in line for food. Daily, they'd stand hours for bread, then walk next door and stand hoping to get a chance at ration meat. In Cuba in the 90s, I visited a tobacco factory where weary workers sat in packed rows rolling cigars, a job they would have for life. Once, unexpectedly, our plane landed in East Berlin before the wall was down. I will forever remember the vision: empty streets with rubble, trash, and lines of dusty laundry, a bleak existence. Ambassador Claire Booth Luce, a true patriot, called communism the opiate of the intellectuals. Look at Venezuela. 65 years ago, the fourth wealthiest country in the world, and then it became progressively crippled with socialist policies under Chavez and Maduro's dictatorship. Countless examples illustrate the truth about Marxist ideologies. A few months ago, I met a Chinese dissident, Rushan Abbas, who fled the Xinjiang region of China. At the time, her mother told her not to call anymore. She later heard that her mother had disappeared. In fact, anyone in her circle of loved ones is either dead or in training centers, forced labor camps that practice religious oppression, rape, sterilizations, abortions, and even organ harvesting. Thankfully, Rushan is now a US citizen, forwarding a campaign for the Uyghurs. She will not be silenced. But she fears an insidious wave embedded in today's America: censorship, moral decay, and willful repudiation of American ideals. To combat this, the Heritage Foundation continues to stoke the flames of freedom, upholding our Constitution and battling to preserve our exceptional America. President Reagan worried that without a fight to maintain our founding values, one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. My father, Shelby Cullum Davis, was a proud chairman of the Heritage Foundation board for 7 years and was so proud to be the first recipient, along with my dear mother, Catherine, to get the Claire Booth Luce Award. He firmly believed that this cycle of decay is not inevitable. In a speech at Windsor Castle, he called for action, stating, "It depends on us. How much do we love our country?" The challenge stands. Thank you, Heritage Foundation, and thanks to each of you for embracing our America the Beautiful.
Heritage Foundation's president, Dr. Kevin Roberts.
No, my wife Michelle, I'm not out here to sing. I'm here to say, Diana Davis Spencer, what a great American you are, and like everyone in this room and every family organization represented in this room, I think the future for America is bright because of your witness. Another round of applause for our great friend. Two groups of people I want to recognize, one a small group and one I'm sure a little bit larger group. But it's incumbent upon me because so many of you have come up to me over the last few days and said, Kevin, great job for this event. And I mean it when I say it, I deserve no credit. Because every single person at Heritage, every single person who makes our work possible, every single organizational partner, every single elected official, every alumnus of Heritage really deserves credit for this. But there are three people in particular I want to identify and recognize tonight. They have some gifts that will be best enjoyed on a Saturday night, maybe a Friday night. And so for our co-chairs of this event, Rob Bluey and Bridget Wagner, would you please stand and be recognized for your great work? And as if that wouldn't put me in enough trouble, during our next senior management meeting next week, the next one really will, because this young lady who does everything while being completely unflappable, even when I joke with her about forgetting what I'm supposed to do, which of course I may still do, she never wants recognition. Mary Swift and her team are the best in the business. Mary Swift, thank you so much. I hear giggling in the back, and that probably means that's because Mary's going to trip me when I go back there. But all kidding aside, thank you. And in all seriousness, you know, we've thanked the staff of the Gaylord. Thank you again. We've thanked you. But there's a group of people we really need to honor always, because we wouldn't be here without them. If you are a veteran of the armed forces, please stand. Thank you. I intended in my liberal arts historian way that you would intuit I also meant active duty, but in case you didn't stand in your active duty, are you out there? Okay, you understood. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. This is why Mary's in the back saying, it's always better when he has notes. Liberal arts, what can I tell you? I will have some other comments at the end of the show. I hope you're ready for those 2 hours. But it's a real privilege to introduce someone who's become one of my many new friends since I became the president of the Heritage Foundation. Someone who would be on my television set at home, probably about right now, if I were not here with you. Someone who understands the role that every American plays as we try to reclaim and rejuvenate this country. Someone who understands the power of humor. Someone who understands the long American and English tradition of sarcasm. Someone who maybe when he was a young colleague at Heritage more than 30 years ago as a copy editor, proofreader, writer at our then policy magazine, Policy Review, might have learned something about the Heritage custom of always being cheerful even when we hit hard. You can smile when you hit hard, as long as you're not trying to throw the first punch. Someone who understands that in 2023, something has changed about America. And recognizing what has changed in America, which is that it's harder and harder for the everyday American to remain clawed to the American dream, who understands that for the first time since Pew and Gallup were taking polls about these attitudes in the 1940s, Americans aged 30 and younger are the first generation to have less optimism about the future. Someone who understands that recognizing that doesn't mean that we're demonizing America. In fact, quite the opposite. What we want to do is fix that. And the way to fix that is, as we like to say at Heritage, to use radical candor, to read reality truthfully. And God bless him for having the courage, in spite of all of the barbs, all of the arrows he receives for speaking the truth, to show up every night on our television sets, to really make possible the ability to see someone who's a communications expert explain what the problem is, who would also, in his gratitude for the professional formation that Heritage offered, be here with us tonight. And as I joked with him backstage, knowing that he couldn't eat his salad or his entree because so many were visiting with him, his steak was really good. I might also make a joke, having done some bird hunting with him in September, that one of the two of us was, just by arithmetic, the better shot. And I'll let him confess to who it was. All of that to say, I know that all of you are grateful for his witness. And it is a witness. It's a witness to that flag right over there. It's a witness to the ideals of America. It's a witness to the truth that we are given from God, and a witness that you can at the same time declare what is wrong with the present day and also be zealously optimistic about the future. Would you please join me in welcoming our friend, Tucker Carlson.
One of the key differences between conservatives and liberals is that liberals really mean it. And by it, I mean politics. So for the average conservative, the purpose of politics is to clear space for the things you actually care about. The point of the other side is to wield power. When the Biden administration pulled out of Afghanistan and armed the Taliban with one of the largest militaries in the entire region, no one was punished. When it turns out the vaccines didn't do what they told us they were going to do. When the lockdowns hurt more people than they helped, not one person was punished. So it would be encouraging to see someone punished for this debacle, for the 1,000 train derailments we have every year. You don't want the Third World War because you have children or grandchildren, because your own country is in deep trouble, your economy's falling apart, so you're not all in on World War III against Russia and China, and you get a moral lecture from these people? Right, okay. It's like getting a moral lecture from the banks. I'm going to steal your identity and then mock and degrade the immutable characteristics that define you as a person. And then as I do this, you are going to smile brightly and applaud and then give a speech about how liberated you feel. You don't like the direction of the country, have children, raise them the way that you want, consistent with your beliefs. When they're telling you that the two things you cannot have are guns and prayer, you know for a fact that those are the two things you need most. You will change the world if you are brave and calm enough to articulate what is true. Over time, that works.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tucker Carlson.
Thank you. Oh yeah, thank you for having me. I love the music, thank you. You're really nice. I feel a little underdressed looking out in this crowd of handsome, well-dressed people. I just came from work, and if you wear a tuxedo in the air, they think it's the March of Dimes, so I didn't want to make any, I don't think it was a telethon, so pardon my appearance. It's amazing to be in a room. This is far more people than live in the town that I live in. I haven't been in an elevator in 3 years. That's how remote my life has become, so it's just very cool, or worn socks for that matter, to be in a room full of nice people. And I want to thank you, Father Scalia, wherever you are. That invocation, for some reason, that really got me. Yeah, it did. And actually, I'll just tell you, since it's just us and no one's watching, that it reminded me that I don't pray enough for the country, and I should. And I'm upset. But the answer is to include the country in your prayers. So thank you for reminding us of that. Anyway, thank you. I just want to start by saying that I'm grateful to be here, and I want to tell you why I am here. There are two specific reasons. The first and most immediate is that during this fall's midterm elections, I got almost every single call wrong. I typically don't weigh in on races because, what do I know? I don't actually cover politics. I'm not that interested. But this time I got so spun up and so emotional that I convinced myself there was this wave coming, this political liberation that was going to happen, and I told our viewers that in some great detail and introduced a series of candidates who subsequently lost as, the new governor of New York or fill in the blank. And it was so humiliating to be that wrong in public, often wrong, not usually in front of other people, that I thought I've just got to take some time off and think about why I was so unbelievably wrong. So I went pheasant hunting, not that it was the pheasant's fault, but that is kind of a way to clear your head. And I wound up, because bird hunting really is, again, not good for the birds, but very good for you. And I wound up in South Dakota with Kevin, among other people, including a couple of my college roommates. And I was so impressed by him as a person. And really, having spent my life in Washington, I can tell you, if you're not from here, the key question about anybody who runs any institution in Washington is, how false is this person? God sends messages, we can't immediately translate all of them. So I can't tell you what that meant. There clearly is meaning. The point is, the man who runs Heritage is not false at all. In fact, my assessment of him was, he's completely real. He's an honest person. He means it. He's not playing a role. And that was so thrilling to me to see that. And by the way, it was confirmed by one of Heritage's security people who was standing backstage with me, and I asked him, because the security guys always know, they're all former cops. They've seen everything. They have seen humanity in various states of drunken undress. Like, you can't shock them. And they know who's real and who's not. And I asked, what do you think? And one of them said to me, to my face, I would go to war for him. And I thought, and these are the kind of people who will tell you the truth. I mean, like, why would he lie to me? I don't even know his name, but he meant it. And so to see a leader, a real leader at the helm of an institution that matters, that has the kind of throw weight that Heritage does, was thrilling, was absolutely thrilling for me. Because the story of the last decade is the collapse of leadership, not of the population. The people remain noble and decent, so far as I can tell. I still live here, I'm never leaving. We have good people, we have terrible people in charge. And not just of our government, but of the institutions that I grew up in, the Episcopal Church, my high school. I could just go on and on and on. They're all run by weak people. And it's the same in marriage. Weak husband causes angry wife. Weak leaders cause an angry country. That's true. And to see someone who's not a weak leader at the helm of Heritage just thrilled me. So I wanted to come for that reason, just being totally blunt with you. And the second reason is to pay homage and to give some measure of thanks to Ed Fulner for giving me my first job, which changed my life. And to say I was not a promising hire would be an understatement. It's not false modesty. In fact, if anything, I'm underplaying it. But I was leaving college without a degree or a job and attempting to marry my girlfriend, which I subsequently did, and ran into this giant roadblock in the form of her Episcopal priest father who said, no, job first. And not only did I not have a job, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I applied to a couple of different places, the CIA, if you can even imagine, some boarding school in Rabat, because I thought, Morocco, lower standards, maybe they'll hire me. No. And I wound up at Heritage, as you heard, as a fact checker, copy editor at Policy Review, the quarterly magazine of the Heritage Foundation. And that job absolutely changed my life. I was paid $14,000 a year plus a $100 bill for Christmas, which Dr. Fulner gave out personally to the entire staff, at least half of whom went downstairs and bought liquor with it at the liquor store, which I think is now part of the intern housing. But it was a long time ago. It was so long ago I smoked in my office. That's how long ago it was. That's like riding a mule to work. Just to put it in the context of American history. Smoke in your office? Yeah, I did. In fact, Matt Spalding told me to stop one day, and I thought, wow. This modernization program is moving too fast for me. I can't deal with it. I've always been conservative in the truest sense. But Matt, you were right, and I quit. And anyway. But yes, it was a long time ago. And in the course of that job, though I didn't get rich, to be honest with you, I did learn what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, which was become a journalist. And that was really under the guidance of a man called Adam Meyerson, who ran it, who was that was 32 years ago. And to this day, he really is the kindest person I've ever worked for. Just kind and patient and exact. He thought I was completely nuts. He thought I was a lunatic. And I could tell he thought that. But he was patient with me through my entire year and a half there, helped me get my next job at a newspaper in Arkansas because no one else would hire me, but he set me up with this job. He walked into my cubicle and said, "Do you want to move to Arkansas?" And so I called my bride, who was a religion teacher at the local Episcopal school, and I said, "Do you want to move to Arkansas?" And what a wonderful woman she's turned out to be. And she said, "Of course. Is that near Colorado?" Quote. But she was willing to go there. Very much a Northeasterner at heart, but and we did, and we loved it. But I got there because Adam Meyerson felt that it was his job to help me get my next job, because his job was to train up reasonable people and put them in journalism, even if it meant sending them to Arkansas. And I was thinking about Heritage this morning in the shower, not a place I think about it, but I did today. And what makes it great, and one of the best things about Heritage over time, longitudinally, 50 years say, is that Heritage has always hired a lot of people. And that is an underrated thing. It really is. Giving people a job, even if it's 14 grand a year plus a $100 bill for liquor, you change someone's life. You put them on a trajectory. At least that's true for me. I mean, I had not succeeded in school, to put it mildly. And I did not feel, I always felt like I was smart. Not one other person felt that way. Until I got to Heritage. I'm not sure they were super impressed, but they treated me like an adult. Because they had high intellectual standards. They were standards of honesty. And the idea at Heritage when I worked there wasn't just that we're fighting this war against the other side, of course, but it did not logically follow from that at Heritage that you could say whatever you wanted. Just because the other side was rotten didn't mean you could be rotten. They really hewed to the highest standards of factual accuracy, intellectual honesty. They really meant it. They did. And even if you didn't agree with them, they were very serious about it. They were intellectually serious people, every single person I worked with. The receptionist in the office at Policy Review was going to school at night to learn Russian. And then the week I started at Policy Review, the Soviet Union collapsed, which was an amazing thing. The coup against Gorbachev in the third week of August 1991 was the week I started at Heritage. And in retrospect, of course, you never appreciate the significance of things as they happen to you. You can't really know what the movie's about until it ends. But at the time, we didn't really appreciate how, well, two things. One, our entire political orientation was based on this war between the United States and the Soviet Union, this Cold War, but very much a war. And every part of our politics, as you well remember, those of you my age and older remember, every part of our politics revolved around that central conflict. We were in conflict with a country that was both anti-markets and anti-Christian. And that put in stark relief our own beliefs. And what would happen when that ended, when there wasn't that clear contrast? That's the first thing. And of course, the second thing is we could never have known the third week of August 1991, as we saw totalitarianism die, that it would ever come here. We just couldn't imagine that. We believe that victories were permanent. They're not, of course. That's the first lesson of history. Nothing is permanent except our own demise and God. But we didn't kind of get that. If you told me then that this week the Department of Justice would have indicted a group of people I don't agree with, by the way, on a lot of different issues, black nationalist socialists from Florida, okay, kind of not my demographic, but would have indicted them for criticizing the U.S. position, the Biden administration's position on the war in Ukraine, and charged them with felonies for which they're each facing 10 years in prison. If you told me that could happen here, I would have laughed at you. No. We have a First Amendment. That can't happen here, but it has. That and a lot of other things, which are gravely unsettling, actually, in people who were rooted in the Cold War story and the reality of the Cold War, again, my age, 53, kind of know where that goes. So the purpose of my talk, which by the way, I will keep brief. I'm an inveterate talker. I can literally talk forever. You can't even imagine my capacity for loquaciousness. I mean, it has no end. It's a bottomless well. You know, if you dropped a quarter off the observation deck of the Empire State Building, how long would it take to hit the sidewalk? That was always what we talked about when we were kids. You would never hear it, in my case. I can literally go on first. So I will stop, and Kevin and I are going to have a conversation which I think will be much more edifying. But I would just say two things about the present moment, because I think about them all the time. And I brood on this constantly. And then I take every afternoon, because fundamentally I'm Swedish, I take a sauna every day. As a rest, I do, I'm not kidding, every single day, never miss it, and my whole family does. It's like our one cultural contribution. Oh, we're Swedish, ooh, it's a very deep ethnicity. Oh yes, a lot of Swedish traditions. You should hear our comedy, it's hilarious. But the one thing I do is take a sauna to kind of get out of my head and get away from all this stuff, and I never can, and I just use my time in the sauna to brood more. But here are two conclusions I've come to, which I think are slightly less depressing than the most obvious, which is the country's really going at high speed in the wrong direction. Yeah, no kidding. Like in ways that are just unfathomable. And for people, my father's age, for example, who's 82 and such a decent man, and I could go on forever about my dad, who I saw this morning, was just born in an orphanage called the Home for Little Wanderers in Boston and became a success and the head of a federal agency and served in the Marine Corps and sort of lived the America that you imagine is possible for people who are smart and try hard and all that. For people of that age, it's too much, actually. The change is too abrupt. They can't metabolize it, really. It's too horrifying. But for those of us who are still engaged in trying to figure out what this means and not just repelled by it, I would say two things that I think we're thinking about. The first is you look around and you see so many people break under the strain, under the downward pressure of whatever this is that we're going through. And you look with disdain and sadness as you see people you know become quislings, you see them revealed as cowards, you see them going along with a new thing, which is clearly a poisonous thing, a silly thing, saying things they don't believe because they want to keep their jobs. If there's a single person in this room who hasn't seen that, through George Floyd and COVID and the Ukraine war, raise your hand. Oh, nobody? Right, you all know what I'm talking about. And you're so disappointed in people. You are, and you realize that the herd instinct is maybe the strongest instinct. I mean, it may be stronger than the hunger and sex instincts, actually. The instinct, which again is inherent to be like everybody else and not to be cast out of the group, not to be shunned, that's a very strong impulse in all of us from birth. And it takes over, unfortunately, in moments like this, and it's harnessed, in fact, by bad people in moments like this to produce uniformity. And you see people going along with this, and you lose respect for them. And that certainly happened to me at scale over the past 3 years. I'm not mad at people, I'm just sad, I'm disappointed. How could you go along with this? You know it's not true, but you're saying it anyway? Really, you're putting your pronouns in your email? You're ridiculous. But no one else thinks it's ridiculous. Oh no, there's the pronouns in the email. What does that even mean? What does it even mean? You're saying things you can't define. LBGTQIA+? Who's the plus? The plus is invited to my show anytime. Find a plus and I'll interview him. What's it like to be a plus? Am I a plus? I'm serious. I feel like I'm an addition. Does that make me a plus? No one even knows what it is. And the whole society, LGBTQIA+. All right, what's the plus? Oh, shut up, racist. Okay. So you reach that place and you feel, and this is one of the reasons, Father Scalia, I was actually overcome a little bit with emotion as you prayed, because I realized that I was so upset by the behavior of some people I love, frankly, in a country I revere and always have, that I wasn't praying for the country. That's on me, and we all should be. But back to my point. So you see the sadness happening. But there is, as there always is, this is a fact of nature and theology and of observable reality, there is a countervailing force at work always. There's a counterbalance to the badness. It's called goodness. And you see it in people. So for every 10 people who are putting he and him in their electronic JP Morgan email signatures, there's one person who's like, no, I'm not doing that. Sorry, I don't want to fight, but like I'm not doing that. It's a betrayal of what I think is true. It's a betrayal of my conscience, of my faith, of my sense of myself, of my dignity as a human being, of my autonomy. I am not a slave. I am a free citizen, and I'm not doing that. And there's nothing you can do to me to make me do it. And I hope it won't come to that. But if it does come to that, here I am. Here I am. It's Paul on trial. Here I am. And you see that in people, and it's a completely unexpected assortment of people. I'm really interested in cause and effect, and as I noted at the outset of my remarks, and my ability to predict the future. Working on that. But because I'm sort of paid to predict things, I try and think a lot about, what connects certain outcomes that I should have seen before they occurred. And in this case, there is no thread that I can find that connects all of the people who've popped up in my life to be that lone brave person in the crowd who says, no, thank you. You could not have known who these people are. They don't fit a common profile. Some are people like me. Some of them don't look like me at all. Some of them are people I despised on political grounds just a few years ago. I could name their names, but you may not even know about their transformations, and I don't want to wreck your dinner by telling you who they are. But there's in one case someone who I made fun of on television, and certainly in my private life in vulgar ways, who was really the embodiment of everything I found repulsive, who in the middle of COVID decided, no, I'm not going along with this, and once you say one true thing and stick with it, all kinds of other true things occur to you. The truth is contagious. Lying is, but the truth is as well. And the second you decide to tell the truth about something, you are filled with this, I don't want to get supernatural on you, but you are filled with this power from somewhere else. Try it. Tell the truth about something. You feel it every day. The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become. That's completely real. It's measurable in the way that you feel. And of course, the opposite is also true. The more you lie, the weaker and more terrified you become. We all know that feeling. You lie about something, and all of a sudden you're a prisoner of that lie. You are diminished by it. You are weak and afraid. Drug and alcohol use is the same way. It makes you weak and afraid. But you look around and you see these people, and some of them really have paid a heavy price for telling the truth. And they are cast out of their groups, whatever those groups are, but they do it anyway. And I look on at those people with the deepest possible admiration. I am paid to do that. I face no penalty. Someone came up to me like, you're so brave. Really? I'm a talk show host. It's like I can have any opinion I want. That's my job. That's why they pay me. It's not brave to tell the truth on a cable news show. And if you're not doing that, you're really an idiot. You're really craven. You're lying on television? Why would you do that? You're literally making a living to say what you think, and you can't even do that? Please. But how about if you're a senior vice president at Citibank? I'm serious. At Citibank. And you're making, $4 million a year. And you've got 3 kids in Bedford, and 2 are in boarding school, and 1 starting at Wesleyan next year. And you need this job, honestly. And your whole sector is kind of collapsing, and you know that. There is no incentive whatsoever for you to tell the truth about anything. You just go into the little re-education meetings and you're like, yeah, diversity is our strength. That's exactly right. We need equity in the capital markets. Okay, all right. So if you're the one guy who refuses to say that, you are a hero, in my opinion. And I know some of them. In fact, my job is to interview them. And I sit back and I look at these people and I give them more credit than I do people who display physical courage, which is often impulsive, by the way. And I'm not denigrating physical courage, which I deeply admire, but you interview people who do amazing things, who rush into the proverbial burning building. And every man is kind of trained from birth to fantasize about what he would do when the building catches fire and you hear a baby crying, and so you run inside. No one is trained to stand up in the middle of a DEI meeting at Citibank and say, this is nonsense. And the people who do that, they have my deepest admiration. And so their example really gives me hope. It thrills me. I talk to them all day long, people like that. That's the first thing. We should, in this sad moment of profound and widespread destruction of the institutions that people who share our views built, by the way. Earlier generations that would agree substantially with every person in this room, they built those and now they're being destroyed. And oh, that's so depressing. But we can also see rising in the distance new things, new institutions led by new people who are every bit as brave as the people who came before us. Amen. Here's the second thing I'd like to say before I get to the conversation with Dr. Roberts, which is that it might be time to start to reassess the terms we use to describe what we're watching. So when I started at Heritage, the presumption was, and this is a very Anglo-American assumption, that the debates we're having are kind of rational debates about the way to get to mutually agreed upon outcomes. Right? So like we all want the country to be more prosperous and free and people to be less oppressed or whatever. And so we're going to argue about tax rates, and I think higher tax gets us there. I'm like Keynesian, and you disagree, you're an Austrian or whatever. But the objective is the same. And so we write our papers, and they write their papers, and may the best papers win. I don't think that's what we're watching now at all. I don't think we're watching a debate over how to get to the best outcome. I think that's completely wrong. And I've come to this conclusion, and I should say at the outset I'm an Episcopalian, so don't take any theological advice from me, because I don't have any. I grew up in the shallowest faith tradition that's ever been invented. It's not even a Christian religion at this point, I say with shame. But I'm just saying this as an observer of what's going on. There is no way to assess, say, the transgenderist movement with that mindset. Policy papers don't account for it at all. If you have people who are saying, I have an idea, let's castrate the next generation, let's sexually mutilate children. I'm sorry, that's not a political debate. What? It has nothing to do with politics. What's the outcome we're desiring here? An androgynous population? Is that really what are we arguing for that? I don't think anyone could defend that as a positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate interests are behind that. Well, what is that? Well, it's irrational. If you say, well, I think abortion is always bad, well, I think sometimes it's necessary, that's a debate I'm familiar with. But if you're telling me that abortion is a positive good, what are you saying? Well, you're arguing for child sacrifice, obviously. It's not about a teen girl gets pregnant and what do we do about that and victims of rape. I get it. Of course I understand that, and I have compassion for everyone involved. But when the Treasury Secretary stands up and says, you know what you can do to help the economy? Get an abortion. Well, that's like an Aztec principle, actually. There's not a society in history that didn't practice human sacrifice. Not one. I checked. Even the Scandinavians, I'm ashamed to say. It wasn't just the Mesoamericans, it was everybody. So that's what that is. Well, what's the point of child sacrifice? Well, there's no policy goal entwined with that. No, that's a theological phenomenon. And that's kind of the point I'm making. None of this makes sense in conventional political terms. When people or crowds of people, or the largest crowd of people at all, which is the federal government, the largest human organization in human history, decide that the goal is to destroy things, destruction for its own sake. Hey, let's tear it down. What you're watching is not a political movement, it's evil. So if you want to assess, and I'll put it in and I'll stop with this. I'll put it in non-political, or non-specific theological terms, and just say, if you want to know what's evil and what's good, what are the characteristics of those? And by the way, I think the Athenians would have agreed with this. This is not necessarily just a Christian notion. This is kind of I would say, widely agreed upon understanding of good and evil. What are its products? What do these two conditions produce? Well, good is characterized by order, calmness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to call it, lack of conflict, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true, it is. And evil is characterized by their opposites: violence, hate, disorder, division, disorganization, and filth. So if you are all in on the things that produce the latter basket of outcomes, what you're really advocating for is evil. That's just true. I'm not calling for a religious war, far from it. I'm merely calling for an acknowledgement of what we're watching, which is not what, and I'm certainly not backing the Republican Party. I mean, ugh. I'm not making a partisan point at all. I'm just noting what's super obvious. Like, those of us who are in our mid-50s are caught in the past in the way that we think about this. One side's like, no, I've got this idea, and we've got this idea, and let's have a debate about our ideas. They don't want a debate. Those ideas won't produce outcomes that any rational person would want under any circumstances. Those are manifestations of some larger force acting upon us. It's just so obvious. It's completely obvious. And I think two things. One, we should say that and stop engaging in these totally fraudulent debates where we are using the terms that we used in 1991 when I started at Heritage, as if maybe, I could just win the debate if I marshaled more facts. I've tried that, doesn't work. And two, maybe we should all take just like 10 minutes a day to say a prayer about it. I'm serious. Like, why not? And I'm saying that to you not as some kind of evangelist. I'm literally saying that to you as an Episcopalian, the Samaritans of our time. I'm coming to you from the most humble and lowly theological position you can. I'm literally an Episcopalian, okay? And even I have concluded it might be worth taking just 10 minutes out of your busy schedule to say a prayer for the future, and I hope you will.
Good job.
Thank you. Ah!
Oh man, the chance to interview Tucker Carlson. Do I have some questions? But because you made your first point 7 times, we only have a few minutes.
Well, that's kind of a signature move for me.
Yeah. Must be the elitist in you.
Well, there's a lot of that still.
We've got time for 2 questions.
Great.
But all seriousness, Tucker, thank you. What a great message.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yep.
It was heartfelt.
Things go south at Fox News, there's always a job for you at Heritage.
Well, you've saved me before, so thank you.
We do that for a lot of people very happily. We're not called America's Outpost for nothing. Yeah, think about that. First question, all kidding and sarcasm aside. What do you think over the last 10 or 20 years, whatever timeline you think is appropriate, has changed the most? That is, and I mean that socially and culturally, I don't mean that politically, although you can go there if you want, that has affected everyday Americans' lives?
The lack of information. This is so name-droppy, but I can't resist because
it's the elitist in you.
No, I know, it must be. No, I was actually interviewed Elon Musk this week, and he
there
said
you go.
So I know. I was talking to Elon Musk, Elon and I, smoking a cigar on his G4, and he turns to me and he says, Tuck, he calls me Tuck. No, I interviewed him for work, obviously, and he had such a wonderful line, and he said, the most likely outcome is the most ironic outcome. And I thought, boy, that's actually I would argue that's a Christian precept, actually. It's kind of the Beatitudes, the first shall be last. And the opposite of what you think is going to happen happens. And so often, so the internet, the core promise of the internet was as much information as we've ever had at your fingertips, and the result has been a centralization of information. This is deliberate, needless to say, but unnoticed by most people, that results in more controlled information than we could even have imagined 20 years ago. So a lot of information just is not available. I mean, because it's digital and it's controlled by a small number of companies, the polling suggests that a lot of Americans, and I don't mean like hundreds, I mean hundreds of millions of Americans, have no idea what's going on. They don't know the facts about certain things. That it's not just because they're dumb or they're distracted on their iPhones. The whole point of the iPhone was to inform you, and the net effect has been to make people completely ignorant of the actual facts, like the non-disputed facts about a lot of different things. And you saw this certainly during COVID. So that challenges the idea of democracy, which rests on the notion of an informed voting public, of a citizenry. And we don't have that. And that really, I never would have expected that at all. And the last thing I'll say is don't throw away your hard copy books, because they are the repository, the enduring repository that cannot be, and I'm dead serious, and I don't mean to, I'm not going to tell you to buy golden ammo, though obviously you should think about it. But definitely don't throw away your books, because they can't be disappeared, because they exist physically. And I would say a corollary to that is don't throw away your relationships with other people, because they can't be disappeared either. The material, the physical, things that you can smell, those are the things that you can trust. Your spouse, your dogs, your children, especially your dogs, but your actual friendships, your college roommates, people in person. As the world becomes more digitized and people live in this kind of, this realm that's disconnected from physical reality, I think the only way to stay sane is to cling more tightly to the things that you can smell. And I've really gotten to the point where if I can't smell it, I'm not dealing with it. And I mean that. And that includes books. Anyway, that's what's changed.
Books, relationships, and ammo. Tucker Carlson's Guide to the Universe.
Yes.
That is awesome. Well, we've got 46 seconds.
Okay.
This one. And it's tight because we have two real treats, even after you.
I talk too much, and my apologies.
No, don't apologize. All great. I knew you were going to talk more than you said you would.
Every time, ask my wife.
And now we're down to 28 seconds. So when everyone wakes up tomorrow, whether they're staying here or they're able to go home, what should be top of mind for them to do in their local community?
Oh, well, the very first thing you should do every single day is tell all the people you love that you love them, for two reasons. Because you do, and affirming things out loud makes them real. Words are the most important and most powerful thing that we have, and of course I have an interest in saying that. If I sold Chryslers, I'd be like, cars are the most important thing. But words are, in the beginning was the word, and so articulate it. And that is also simultaneously an acknowledgement of a truth that we don't face, which is we don't know what's going to happen today. And we could die. That's the one thing that unites every person, is the certainty of death. And reminding yourself of that every single day will bring you, paradoxically, joy. I love you. That's the most important thing.
What a wonderful response. In a lot of ways, that's a fitting way, not for just you and me to conclude our brief conversation.
Sorry.
You're never going to live that one.
Yeah, well.
But in a lot of ways, also a good way for us to conclude this gathering before some additional entertainment. And so I will ask all of you to join me in thanking Tucker Carlson for being here tonight and for what you do.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
But we're not done yet. Thanks again, Tucker. So in a few moments, just a few moments, my friend and colleague Genevieve Wood will be here and tell you a little bit more about what we're going to do, but I wanted to leave you with one thought. Of course, I've told you it's sort of two thoughts. I'll be abusive like Tucker was. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for those of you who've been here for the last few days, but I'll cut to the chase in the interest of time because we have so much in store for you for the next little while. And that is every single time that Americans' backs have been at the wall. 1763, French and Indian War. 1776, you know that one. 1781, the first few hours of the Battle of Yorktown, if you know, weren't really a given. The War of 1812, I mean, right where we're sitting, basically, the British were here and the future of this young country was undetermined. The Civil War, obviously, both world wars, the wars of more recent times, plus the political cataclysms that happen in a republic. Every single time, no exceptions, people thought it could never be worse. People despaired. People were despondent because of human nature. And yet there's something about the American spirit, represented best by that flag, that ought to tonight and every night, instill in us a hopefulness about the future. Not just a perseverance, not just the great cardinal virtue of fortitude, which is kind of quintessentially American, but a hopefulness that as we fight, as we charge hills, as we bear the burdens we have, that we always know for the United States of America, bestowed with so many virtues as a society by our Creator, there's always more. Thank you for celebrating 50 years with the Heritage Foundation, and don't you ever doubt that when the chips are down, we're going to be there charging the hill with you. God bless you.